Not sure what happened, but we're here today with Nick Disabato, um, owner of the consultancy Draft in Chicago, and he's going to be looking at some of our website strategy group member websites, and he's going to be kind of talking about some of the core concepts of his book Value-Based Design, which you can get at draft.nu/value. Nick just dropped it in the chat. And we're going to be basically trying to take some of the principles of the book and of the value propositions ideas and kind of apply them live here on the call to some of these awesome designer websites who are in this private group. And I talked to Nick a little bit about kind of these sites. And so he's got kind of the background in place. But yeah, I think this will be super awesome. So thanks, Nick, for coming by.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to do this.
Awesome.
Should I give a couple opening thoughts about stuff before we get into the site teardown? Does that make sense?
Yeah, you definitely should. I'm a little jumping the gun here, trigger happy because of the snafu on the link.
Not a problem. So thank you again for having me. I'm tremendously excited to be doing this. So as Rob mentioned, I wrote a book called Value-Based Design. It is my 5th book, and it is, in short, how designers can prove their worth in any organization. If you're a freelancer, like probably you are if you're listening to this, then you're going to learn a great deal about positioning and how business operates and why people hire you and how you can kind of leverage that to control the conversation better. If you're in-house in an organization, it'll teach you a lot about how to measure the impact of your design decisions and hopefully get a promotion you wanted, or get more favor among top brass and be taken more seriously, like anything that you want in an organization, hopefully. And so I've been writing it for the past 5 years or so. It contains kind of an overview of business, but I think a large part of why we're here today is because the last 30, 40 pages of the book go through how value-based designers in general create case studies and promote themselves. So the websites that Robert sent me are, I'm going to be going at them mostly from a positioning angle, but also from a how do you solve the expensive problems that you solve for various businesses? And I go into more detail on this in the book and in the accompanying workbook that you would get from it, but I stress the importance of finding a problem that is affecting a business's, usually their top line revenue or their costs, something that is actually economic impact for the business, and specifically solving for that. So you're not only niching down using your positioning for an industry, but also for a specific problem. A lot of designers end up doing this and may make quite a great deal of success about it. I can provide an example myself, obviously, where I do CRO and optimization and research-driven A/B testing for e-commerce stores making usually around 6 million and up. So I have a specific industry, but also the kind of fundamental expensive problem is that Shopify's default doesn't work, and I make it work, and I make it meet your customer's specific needs. Other value-based designers I've seen have focused on tactics like user onboarding. There's a guy out there named Samuel Hulick who all he does is he goes through user onboarding of various SaaS businesses and rips them to shreds. And if you go to useronboard.com, you can take a look, and they're entertaining and fun. And then he has a guide that you can buy, or you can get one done for your own business for a ton of money, and it works out really, really well. So I'm thinking about that and bringing that sort of perspective to the websites that we're going to be taking a look at over the coming hour, because I think that a lot of designers, they put up their work and they don't think about how the work is being read or how it's being interpreted and what conclusions the reader is making from it. And those conclusions are the beginning of the negotiation process that you have. And you can control that. You can edit your website. You can change the messaging on it. And I think it behooves you to do that because you have the most agency over that before people even come in the door. So I think that's it for the kind of initial spiel. Does that all make sense? I'll go and screen share, and then we'll start going into the site teardowns. Does that make sense?
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Nick.
Not a problem.
For the people here in the Zoom call, there's a Q&A thing that we may be able to get to after some of the website teardowns. I think it's at the bottom here. It looks. I think you click on it, and there should be a way to do Q&As. I only see what questions have been asked, but you can drop it there. There's also a Slack channel for Folyo members, so I'm going to drop the link in there, and if you can ask a question in there as well. But without further ado, Nick.
Lovely. All right. So I just shared the browser window. Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
Lovely. Cool. So the first one is Theory Design by Ryan McMaster. Ryan, I see you're on the call. Do you want to share a few thoughts about your thinking about this before I go and rip into it?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, Rob just went through this with me last week, and basically what I had before was a site that expressed that I took B2B SaaS apps and optimized them. So not just the design, but it was actually about converting users and improving the AARRR metrics for startups. So that was what I had before. But as that became just common, I was just getting a lot of bad leads. So this was just my first foray into, okay, what am I really doing these days? So it's branding, marketing, and product design all really tightly bundled together, and long-term engagements with clients who are either doing brand new, really well-funded seed stage startups, or I'm coming in at like Series A or Series B and helping them rebrand and reposition their products. So this is very light, and I'm just showing that like these are iconic brands, and that if you've heard of me, it's probably because we've talked, or you're in my network, so you should just fill out my form. But it definitely needs a lot more work.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. And thank you for sharing this. And I'm excited to kind of start talking about it. So what you just said, where it's people who are already in your network that are coming in and you've already had a conversation, that makes sense to me when I'm looking at this, because I came in cold, right? And I don't know anything about you. I've known this for literally 2 hours. And so I looked at this and thought like, well, I hope people know him already. Because I didn't immediately understand like what you just said makes total sense to me, but it doesn't seem to be directly reflected on here in like, it's very light on text. It's very light on description. Yeah. And when I was going through and clicking on these logos, like I love the coloration and I love the layout of this, but I don't know what these logos necessarily represent. And then when I go and I click through, if I open these in new tabs, for example, then I go in and I see, oh, this is UserSnap. And presumably you designed this homepage. It looks beautiful. And then you presumably, well, that might not go through. Here we go, course.ai. This also looks really nice. Like these are great websites. The challenge, there are a few things about the way that you've linked these that I want to be talking about here. The name isn't mentioned, what you did for them isn't mentioned, and they link off to the actual websites. There are challenges about how you're doing that, because if they update the design or change something radically or like axe your design wholesale, like this makes sense now, but you're not going to be refreshing, usersnap.com to make sure that they haven't messed up your design. Like you're going to be getting back to your job and hoping that this is actually passively getting leads in. So I think that this is a good first step for showing here are the amazing brands that I work with, but you can go one further by explaining who these brands are, what they are, what you did for them, and what your thinking was. And I wanted to contrast this actually by bringing up one of the case studies that we've written for Draft, because it looks like it couldn't look more different. This is something from Draft. And if you go to draft.nu/helped, we have like our whole list of like common case studies there. I won't bore you with that. So this is one of them. And it's literally a screenshot of something that I did with them and a giant brick of text, and then a call to action at the bottom. And there's no text here, so it's very different. Having the social proof here works. Having, who you are and what you do, that makes a lot of sense to me. But you need to go one step further by talking about your thinking. Like, people are going to be hiring you for your thinking and not necessarily for how something looks. Because if they hire you for how it looks, then they're going to be casting their own impressions onto it. They're going to be like, give me another one of these, right? And maybe that's not the answer, right? Like, it could be something else entirely, something radically different looking. So what you did to get here, why they retained you, and what kind of results you brought, if you can measure that in any capacity and share out those metrics in some capacity. Because what we did, so it's, they hired us to do this. Here are the total lift that we did. So, if those numbers don't make you like completely freak out as a store owner, I'm not doing my job right. And then we talk a little bit about our thinking here and what overall the process looked like. And at the end, we have the upsell where you can go to my my big like flagship A/B testing offering, which costs the price of a car, or you can just sign up and get an e-commerce CRO roadmap for $0. So it's very focused around talking about who I am, what I did, what the results were. And you earned these quotes in some way. So I want to see how that, as a next step, how you can corroborate those and justify them with the rest of your thinking around it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I'm thinking some of my clients are going to be less happy sharing their revenue numbers before they're far enough along that they're getting enormous investment opportunities or IPOing. So I'm wondering what other metrics I could show. I mean, I could tell a story of how I helped them figure out product market fit or get a certain number of users. I'm just wondering what would be more interesting.
If you can share non-revenue focused numbers, I would recommend like relative percentages. Like, I made revenue go up by 5%, or conversion rate, or customer lifetime value, or something like that. And you can say it went up by 10%, or it went up from A to B or something. That might be useful. The thing that I recommend, which probably does not help you directly, but is good for the rest of the room, I contractually require that I be able to share numbers like this in an approved case study after the project is over. So for your future projects, and for everybody else who's watching this, their current and future projects, I put that in place to say, here's why this is important. Getting these kinds of referrals in these case studies is the coin of my realm. Every time I publish a case study, it's made my year, like, for real. Like, it is one of the best things I can do. So I want to make sure that it's as amazing as humanly possible. And usually if you try and bolt that onto the end of an engagement, like, you've already given them the work. They don't even have to pick up the phone for you anymore in a lot of cases. So they don't have an incentive to share those numbers out. But if you do it before the project begins, then they still really want to work with you, and it's just part of the negotiation process.
Gotcha.
So if you can now, I would recommend relative numbers, or like 6x or something like that. If you're able to cite those sorts of things, that might be useful.
That's interesting.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Oh, I guess I'm coming back to maybe this is my issue with positioning, because I'm so hands-on and I'm like deep in with the clients, working for a long period of time. It's hard to nail down exactly what my impact was. I just know that it wasn't doing well before, and then 18 months later, they're acquired. I can't chalk it up all to me. I do a large part, and I help out, and they certainly take me along to their next venture or refer me, so they are happy, but it's hard to take ownership or responsibility for those specific things. Yeah.
Robbie, we're going to say something?
Yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit about this on our call, Ryan, where it's kind of similar to what you just mentioned, which is that it's like you're kind of a generalist in a lot of ways, because you almost like like the thing that Nick was mentioned on the podcast about the jobs to be done interviews, like you almost need like total control over their entire product strategy. Because he's touching on brand, interface, user experience, all this different churn retention stuff. And I know you're not going to be able to solve the positioning here in the next 2 minutes. So, but I am curious about like that sort of thing where it's like I'm doing everything. What are some tips there for maybe narrowing that down a little bit?
I would niche by industry a little bit, because you clearly want to do startups. Like the language that you say here, whether your company is new or post revenue, this is a phrase that doesn't exist outside of startup land, right?
Right.
So I read this, I think, well, this guy is speaking to me as if I'm a startup owner, right?
Yeah.
And so if you go up here, hold on a moment, I clicked the wrong thing. All right. We design technology, brands, and products that resonate with customers. Talk about who you serve in this. Like you do a full stack design consultancy for startups. Startups require you to wear a lot of hats, so you know all of those things, right? Like it's not just that you do branding, it's that you do like 5 different things because you have to, because they're a startup, right? And that is, you're halfway there with that. You're real close. Like it is, you need to talk about startups specifically in the initial positioning statement so people don't nope out or think like that this is too vague. And it's like, what is this? An ad consultancy, some brand design agency for small business. But if you say for startups, then you're going to find your people, right? And that is the beauty of positioning, is that your kindred spirits come out. And you do that down here, but you bury it, right? So that's why I would recommend going up here and talking about that a little bit more here. I think also if you added in like a name of a company and a sentence or two here as a link off to a case study, adding more text around that will probably also help bolster your case that this is a consultancy specifically for startups. Because all I'm going off of is this, and there should be more text on the site in general. So
yeah. Cool. Well, I do want to keep us moving here because I want to be conscious of the hour that we got.
Awesome.
Ryan and I will be working on the site and working on those case studies in the coming months. Looking forward to it.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
All right. So that was another company you worked with. All right. Zippy Zealous. All right. So Shelly, how about we talk about this?
Probably not that page.
Going back home. All right. Sorry.
That one's still being built.
Okay.
All right. So I'm a user interface designer. I've been working on the site this last week. So really the homepage structure is roughly there. And then one case study with the Carmine. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to tell you.
Yeah. Okay. So it says here, positive impact through goal-based user interfaces. Are you creating, what kind of positive impact is it? Is it like a certain impact on their business, or is it impact in like the nonprofit sense? Like what is it supposed to be?
On their business.
On their business. Okay, cool. Explain goal-based to me.
Well, every product has a goal that they want to reach. And so this is kind of the statement that me and Robert were discussing last week. And so I kind of just ran with it this week, and I'm still figuring out kind of the wording on it.
Okay.
What that all means.
Cool. So we have this, and then down here we have learn how these products are creating positive impact in their industries. And so you have presumably these 2 case studies for Carmine and FitStation.
Yeah.
What clients are saying, Shelly is the golden combination of incredible talent, boundless enthusiasm, and a curiosity-fueled collaborator. And then these very tiny logos. And then insights. Is that your blog?
Yeah, it will be. That's just a placeholder right now.
Got it. Cool. Ready to create positive impact. All right. So I'm going to go through to Carmine and take a look here. A SaaS technology for fleet management and next generation data viz. Da, 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 da. These look good. And you, company aims, I was contracted through Blend as the lead app designer. Da, 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 da. Immersing myself in these use cases. I love the layout of this. These like giant iPhones that, I mean, I'm clearly on like a giant desktop machine right now, but it looks really beautiful.
Yeah, I was wondering why the font was so small compared to what I see.
Yeah. Maybe if I shrink it a little bit, it'll be better for people. One thing that immediately pops to my head here, I see a lot about the work that you did and what you delivered and what the results are. Like you did, it clearly looks like this is what you did, right? Like there's screenshots all over the place. It looks really great. But what I'm not quite seeing is outcomes. Like what are the business outcomes of all of this? So I like having the call to action at the bottom here. I like having the ability to actually go to the app and prove that it's been shipped. That's pretty cool. But I would want to add a little bit more information here about like when this rolled out. If it's new software and there's no like baseline to be judging it against, just talk about uptake, like how many people are using it, how many downloads. Is there a high rating on the App Store? I mean, you can see that by clicking through to the App Store. But I, talk about that here, right? So I would maybe talk a little bit more about outcomes here. Fit Station. Because
Fit Station is not done yet.
Fair enough. All right. Carmine looks great. And then I go, back to the top. Let's talk a little bit about this. Positive impact through goal-based user interfaces. So similar to Ryan's site, it's unclear whom you're serving and what specifically you're doing for them in here. It's cool that you're helping people and providing user interfaces that are actually focused on goals, but I think you should go one step further and talk a little bit about like what kind of work you're doing, what makes your user interfaces more oriented around the customer's goals and more able to get results than your competitors, and who specifically is coming in the door. Like what kind of client do you want? And it has to be a specific industry, size, like maybe a place that they are in their business or something like that. But here, I mean, you have a couple extra sentences that you can work with here on a subheading or something like that. Probably, I'm guessing the background is going to change to reflect something that you've done in the past and not just be a solid color. That sort of stuff should communicate more strongly, like whom it is in a very specific way that you're going to be serving. Does that make sense?
Sort of. I think my biggest issue is majority of like the research and user experience is done by someone that I partner with. And so kind of figuring out like where I'm actually positioned is a little confusing to me.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, I mean, you can think about positioning in two different ways. Like who's come in the door and who have you delivered results with in the past, which I think is kind of what you're saying here.
Yeah.
I would encourage maybe a different way, which is kind of who you want and how you can build off of your previous work to grow in your career to figure out who you want to have come in the door in the future. And again, that should be an industry or a company size or a specific need. And, having just, friendly companies or happy companies is not going to cut it. It needs to be an industry or a need. Does that make sense?
Yeah. The thing is, a lot of my projects vary. I've done MVPs. I've worked on large corporations, small businesses. So I'm not sure like where to put that niche in.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
We talked about like the fitness aspect of it, like possibly going down that route as one of the potential options, Shelley.
Yeah.
Fitness based is, fitness apps and fitness sort of positioning. How are you feeling about that right now?
I know I'm going to make a landing page specifically for that, but for this site, it's more of like all the projects that I've worked on. I have only done maybe 60-70% fitness stuff over the past year, like 5 years or more. But I've done a lot of other projects as well. And I don't want to just be stuck in doing fitness and wellness type things. So that's what this site is for.
Yeah.
And that's actually common, Nick. A couple people on these calls have mentioned like, oh, I'm going to do like the more specialized thing on a separate landing page. I'm curious your thoughts on that.
If you're able to, you can do that. You can create a new landing page and drive traffic there and grow your mailing list. I would argue that you're making more work for yourself than you probably need to be. You're operating on hard mode by doing multiple different positionings for multiple different clients. And the reason for that is that if you want to create like an email carrot to get people on your mailing list, if you want to speak to their real needs, if you want to talk about the expensive problems that they're solving, you have to repeat that work in a non-duplicatable way, like 3 or 4 times for the 3 or 4 different landing pages that you're doing. If you want to test out a positioning because you've been doing fitness for too long and you don't really want to be doing that, you have to think about what else you're going to be doing. And it has to be a specific thing. That's the whole point about positioning. So I would, then you would have to spin up a whole different system about that. And I wouldn't pick that lightly necessarily. But I think that when I hear about like, oh, I'm going to do a bunch of different landing pages and a bunch of different positionings, that seems more often than not born out of fear of abandoning a certain market or cutting out too many people or that you're not casting a wide enough net about people. About who.
I'm not worried about that too much. Like,
okay.
The landing page is not that important to me. I feel like this one's more important. Because I'll be able to get not just fitness stuff. Like if I do just fitness stuff for the rest of my life, I think I'm going to go crazy.
I feel that.
But I don't mind doing some of that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. So I would recommend coming up with another specific industry or vertical that you should be serving. It's not just everybody. Like there's not 2 positionings, fitness and everybody. It's fitness and something else. And what you have here looks more like everybody. And so that's why I'm recommending that you need to confidently select somebody to be speaking to that reflects the kind of clients you want to be coming in the door. And like I said before, like the great thing about positioning is that helps people realize, oh, this person is talking my language. And you need to talk their language in a way that shows that you're focused on their needs before you can even have a sales conversation that increases your rates or allows you to talk about value-based work in a meaningful way.
All right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Do you have any follow-ups to that, Shelley?
No, just that I still don't have a position statement.
Yeah. I mean, Nick mentioned this on the podcast that a positioning statement is like an outfit. Like you can change it every day and you choose to wear it every day. Like it's not that you can change it every day, but like it's something that evolves and continues to change. So it's like not something we can solve on a 15-minute call with Nick, even though Nick is awesome, but nobody's that awesome, I guess.
It would be more than 15 minutes. All right.
Yeah,
do we want to move on to the next one here for Jan's exhibits?
Yeah. So
right.
Nate,
how's it going?
Hi there.
Tell me a little bit about Jan's exhibits.
Yeah, it's my brother and I own this company, and it's a custom trade show booth design company specializing in like modular booths.
Okay.
So we're attempting to utilize the website to gain leads for kind of like a higher end client.
Okay. This makes a lot of sense to me. I am unfamiliar with the world of trade show booth design, so I don't know if I'm going to be able to be like, oh, this is a terribly specific positioning. Like, trade shows could be anything, right? Like, so I don't know if it's like game trade shows or housewares trade shows could be more. Like, I genuinely don't know. But this looks like a great start for an overall approach. I see custom trade show design. Our experienced designers can take your booth to the next level with the latest trends in technology. And then I click to view more.
Yeah. I should mention this web page here is kind of just the draft. I don't think any of the links are working.
So if I go to exit, nothing happens. Cool, not a problem. All right, so quick and small pop-up displays, rental booths, and a fully custom booth purchase. So this shows what kinds of things you do. That's great. You're talking about the needs that you're solving. One thing I would love to see here, what are the pains in creating a new trade show booth? Like, what can go wrong? Probably a lot, right? Like, you're building a lot at the last minute, and it's probably really scary, and you're probably like a hovering art director about the whole situation. So, if you're putting out 25 different fires and one of them is the design of the trade show booth at the last minute, say something about how there are like 10 fewer fires you need to be worrying about as the person actually coming to the trade show and selling the wares. We help take that load off of you and give you peace of mind that you've got the trade show design totally on lock. So you're talking about the offerings, but you're kind of skipping a step about the pains and the dreams that trade show booth purchasers would be feeling. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I guess, what are some tips that you would have to make that in like a concise presentation? Because I mean, we can go through 15 different things, but no one's going to want to read through all that.
Yeah, sure. I would focus on like the 2 or 3 biggest pains that they feel. Like, and I'm not a trade show guy, so I wouldn't just be like, do this, this, and this, but like talk to people that are buying trade show booths if you haven't a whole lot of experience, or think about the previous customers you've gotten if you do. And and then you think about, okay, well, what are the biggest things that keep them up at night? Like, what are the things that have made like the most stressful bits of these engagements, and how do we fit into actually making them better? And it's like, do you deal with this problem? We have a specific process that's focused on alleviating this problem. And that way you'll be able to sleep better at night as a trade show booth designer. So you can do that in only a few sentences without having to do the like long form sales letter where it's like, dear customer, imagine it's the day of the trade show and everything is going wrong and herf and earth. Like, it's not a Burma shave type long form sales letter scenario that you need to be proposing here. But I think that just talking about what the problems are and auditing those and finding a way to reflect that in the initial marketing copy allows you to get them a little bit more in the heart than you're doing right here, where it's just like, I do these things. But you're selling high touch work and they need to be able to trust you. So getting that sort of like emotional impact allows them to build that trust and maybe a long-term relationship across many different trade shows, right? They're not going to want to hire a different trade show designer for next year's trade show. They're just going to want to do the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right. So having it be like an annual retainer or something like that seems to make a lot of sense to me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. And that was one of our things that we talked with Robert about was, building trust through over the phone on phone calls is great and easy to do, but how do we translate that into someone has never met us before, just visiting our website?
Yeah. Because they don't know you and they don't know if they should be trusting you. Like, that's, if I were somebody like in a small business that had to do this, that's the first thing that would come to my mind is like, what gives these people the right to take my baby and all of my fees and my reputation and build a booth that's going to wow people? And writing custom trade show design for the first line doesn't do it.
Got it. Okay.
But it does help express your positioning, which is great. So yeah, I like that. I would maybe change up the call to action text and the iconography here, so it's not just the same mouse, the cursor at a box, and it's not just saying examples, more info, more info. Like, that strikes me as quite samey. This does a little bit better. You do a lot of different things. Like, and one of the things that I talk about in positioning is that you kind of niche down on a problem that you're solving. And I, again, not being very versed in trade shows, I don't know if this is a typical like portfolio of services that you provide, but I would go through and take a very careful look at thinking like, is this the kind of stuff I want to be publicizing on the homepage, or can I downplay it? Can a hierarchy exist? Can I bury it in the header nav or put it in the services tab or something like that? Because is it, are these the 3 things that you want to be doing, or is it also these 6 things? Or are you putting this here as a way to like keep the conversation open, kind of born out of a similar fear? It's like, but I can do anything. Like, what happens if everybody comes in for on-site management and it's the bottom thing? Like, that's unlikely, but possible. There's anything is possible. But yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. This Apple Pencil parallax image is a little
It's off.
Maybe it needs to be a little different here. But overall, I like the way that this is organized. I like the approach that you're taking here. I would finesse the first impression that you're making on customers and try and convey that you're a safe bet. That can happen through your resource library. That can happen through maybe putting together a blog or like a really great about page with a lot of good testimonials. If you have third-party testimonials, I don't really see that here. That can even happen with your iPhone app, but it has to start with the first above the fold impression that you're making here.
Got it. Okay.
Otherwise, I think it looks really great.
Thanks.
Cool. Shall we go to the next one? Rob, do you have any other?
Sure.
Okay.
No, let's do it.
Awesome.
So I think it's Patrick, right?
Believe so. Patrick Smith, UI designer, myportfolio.com. And I saw on here that the company name is Trace Tacos. Is on the when Rob was listing this in his email to me. Is that is that still a real going concern?
Pat, yeah, I think he's going by kind of the company name Trace Tacos, or he's trying. That's kind of the direction he's going. Is he wants to bring that brand name, work using that brand name, and then but this is kind of just some of his work. So I think as far as the website goes, he doesn't have a full-on website besides this portfolio. So maybe
I've never really had a website, which is kind of odd being a web designer and everything. But I was going with the name Trace Tacos and started to build a little something, and kind of had this whole personality and so forth behind it. But yeah, this was just a quick, hey, Adobe gives you a free portfolio. So I just took a bunch of screenshots and threw it up there because people were asking me to at least have a portfolio out there. Because even at that, I never really even had one, because all my work when I went independent was always referrals. So I didn't really, just never needed one necessarily. But now it's like, the honeymoon's over 6 years later, kind of drying up. So I'm trying to quickly jump into the wagon on things. But as far as it goes, at least with the Trace Tacos, if you were looking at a, that hero section, what I was working on was focusing on, just that I want to help Shopify store owners, optimize their websites with like a customer-centric design approach that, delights and converts and stuff like that. And I was rolling around the headline, like satisfy customers' needs and revenue will grow. And then kind of go down through this process and talk to people. But I was wanting to kind of hone in on Shopify store owners just because of work I've done in the past with other platforms. Has drove me bananas, and I've always had good results working with companies, e-commerce companies, obviously with Shopify. And so I thought, to hone down on that, but then even thought maybe going even more granular to really focusing more, not just this general optimization thing, where we focus on the low-hanging fruit of speed and all that other stuff, but maybe even was focusing on more that it was just going to be more for the mobile optimization, because the numbers are so low in that realm.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Okay. That's good background to be having here. So let's talk about Shopify writ large first, and then we'll go into your site if that's cool. So I actually sit in a Slack full of other Shopify consultants every day. And so I like all of my clients currently happen to be on Shopify. So I know a fair amount about how their pains get addressed by a lot of people. So I'm going to pull up two that are probably worth taking a look at. And these are established agencies. So like, don't think you have to do all of this right now. But this is my friend Kurt, who I have known since 7th grade, hilariously. And he runs EtherCycle. It's another Chicagoland agency. And they list various like lifestyle brands and various Shopify stores. You can see like Kurt is interviewing the guy who runs Shopify and giving a talk at a conference. So, and he has a signature here for some reason, and one of my clients is on here for some reason, and there's a lot of this conveys that he's a safe bet. So this is kind of a masterclass page in showing what you can do here, and it shows like we've worked for all of these different stores. This part of the page is basically this part of the page that's the predominant meat of what you're talking about here, and you click through. And noted car man, a man of no other distinction, Jay Leno, had, he'd talk about all these different case studies, and you can go through. So you can go through and read this and take a look. My friend Kelly.
The key difference on like the portfolios is that Kurt kind of took it upon himself to talk about the value directly there on like the portfolio image, right? Like,
yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I just wanted to make a quick note of that.
Literal numbers right here. My God. He probably pulled this from me at some point. It's probably my fault. And then at the bottom, there's a call to action to reserve your consultation. This is my friend Kelly's agency. It's a very different looking site, but it gets about the same goals. There's a portfolio here. You can go through and take a look at all of the stores that she's put together. Want to see what we're made of, and then you can go and hover these. And so if I go and click the Progressive NutraCare, so we're taking a little long to load. Here we go. This fade in is weird, but you can go and view the live site. It talks a lot about the impact. It talks a lot about the specific thinking that she had to put in to put this together. And then it kind of goes through and closes a sale. This could be you. Ready to take that large step towards achieving your e-commerce goals? The journey to your new Shopify store starts here. So I think those are great examples. You should spend more time than we have on this call to go through them after this. Mm-hmm. Let's go back to you. This is like you mentioned, it was kind of the default thing on Adobe, so I'm not going to drag it too hard or anything. But what is missing here is any mention of Shopify. So I actually think that is tremendously helpful for niching your positioning. And you can even say that in this tagline here, and list the like Shopify stores first. And then at the bottom, list like non-Shopify stores, because there's this age-defying guy here. And that might happen to be a Shopify store.
Honestly, all these this is just like a hodgepodge of just all the kind of different stuff I've had. And I just kind of threw this up. This was even before I landed like, hey, I'm going to focus on Shopify. So this is just like a mutt of different projects I've just worked on over the last couple of years, in that generalist quote unquote land. So
Yeah.
definitely like I don't send people to this site at all for anything, except for if they do want to just see a portfolio, what do you design? What does it look like? Then I'll maybe send them directly to a couple of them. But yeah, this is like, I would never really want to show this publicly to anybody to land a job.
Yeah. Well, maybe the answer is to either create a different site or like overhaul this one, right? And it can even be something as simple as a landing page where it's just, hey, I do Shopify consulting, 1 or 2 screenshots. Here's my overall thinking. Click to begin a conversation. I think that would do much better, and I think we both agree about this. And I don't think I'm telling you anything like horrifying that like you don't know, because you wouldn't share this with a new person. But you have to think about it. If somebody somehow accidentally stumbles upon me on the internet and they have $1 million that they can give me, what is the best face that I can put on? And I mean, we're in a website teardown, so I have to think about it from that standpoint. But it should be something that talks about who you are, what kinds of problems you can solve, and probably in your case specifically talks about Shopify and why you're trustworthy as a Shopify consultant in, I won't say a crowded market of Shopify consultants, but like, there are the ether cycles of the world. Why should somebody hire you and not this, right? This is a safer bet. This is a designer who has a portfolio.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the excuse of like, oh, this is just my portfolio, I don't send it to anybody except for the people I send it to. That's like a common thing that I see is like people kind of wanting to get it perfect before they are willing to I guess improve upon what they have. Like if the fact is you are ending up sending this page out to people, having this be a little bit better at communicating the value is probably worth it for you, at least right now. Like you don't have the other site up yet. And I'm not just picking on you, Patrick, but or I am just picking on you right now, but just kind of to illustrate for everybody on the call, all the websites we've looked at today, if there is like that incremental thing that you can do to start kind of going in improving that direction, I think doing it now is worth it,
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right.
We do have some questions if you still have time for these last 10 minutes, Nick.
Oh yeah, I got plenty of time, man. Let's
Awesome.
I know can I go through them in order, or are there any that Rob you want me to be taking a look at?
Oh, you can go through them in any order you want.
Okay, cool. I will answer a couple of these pretty rapid fire because they're easy. You would like to answer this question live. Great. Why did you choose e-commerce over SaaS as a client that you serve? So I used to serve a bunch of SaaS businesses, a bunch of e-commerce businesses. I worked for the Wirecutter for a while, and they're kind of a weird hybrid content thing. And I chose e-commerce. So the predominance of my work is what I call research-driven A/B testing, where I'm doing UX research to drive CRO insights that we then run A/B tests for. A/B testing is a lot easier to get statistically significant results on an e-commerce store that does $40 AOV for 1,000 sales a month than it does for a SaaS business where it's maybe a $600 customer lifetime value for only 150 sales a month. There's a term by Gail Collins from Constant Contact called the long, slow SaaS ramp of death. And it's basically that SaaS growth is extremely like tortoise-like and incremental. And I was having a lot of SaaS businesses come in the door that were wonderful and wallet out and really friendly, and sometimes people that I've spoken at conferences with, and they were great fit. But they didn't have enough traffic to get statistically significant results for A/B testing. And so I wasn't able to get results for them. And I was sad, and everyone was sad, and I wouldn't last long. So I switched to e-commerce partly because the numbers worked out, but also just because like the challenges have been interesting and I haven't really hit bottom on it yet. Like it's online stores. Like there's no end to online stores and how they can manifest. You can have a Shopify store that's super tiny. You can have a Shopify Plus store. You can have an enterprisey type thing like Best Buy or Walmart. It has their own team. And all of them bring about very interesting challenges. So I feel like I'm still allowing people to come in the door that are doing interesting things. and I'm able to get good results for them. Let's see. I'll answer the other one. Where did you learn CRO? On the job, the hard way. I learned it 5.5 years ago when there were no good resources. If you want to learn CRO, you can go to draft.nu, my website, and sign up for draft analysis and e-commerce email mastery. And those are very good places to be starting email CRO for e-commerce. Also, Conversion XL is a good place. And Baymard Institute, Baymard. And I would recommend all of those as solid resources.
Yeah, that kind of dovetails nicely with a question I got in the Slack, which is, should I be able to get a good amount of value from the value-based design book if I'm a developer and not a designer?
Well, I love selling books, so it's probably my bias to say yes. However, the book is called Value-Based Design. You'll learn a lot about how to position yourself, how to promote yourself, and hopefully a little bit about measurement and getting results. You might be interested in the part of the book that's about doing research activities that are focused on conversion, but I don't think it will help you directly. I think probably around 2/3 of the book will help you if you're a developer. If you want a book where 100% of the book helps you if you're a developer, I would recommend you're starting a consulting practice or you're just starting out. I would recommend $1 Million Consulting by Alan Weiss, The Personal MBA by Josh Kaufman, Pricing Creativity, which in spite of it being focused on creative agencies can apply to any agency in the tech industry of any kind. That's by Blair Enns. Those are all good resources. But I'm not going to stop you from buying my book, man. You'll get a fair amount out of it, and hopefully it will bring value, no pun intended, to you, and you'll be able to cherry pick from it. I wouldn't read it all the way through. I would X-ray it and pick out what you need.
It is really good for that too, because it's sectioned off in a really intuitive way for kind of picking and choosing. Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Let's go through some more stuff. When promoting yourself behind a brand, individual, freelancer, DBA, should the content, quote, pretend that you are a larger entity? How do you effectively present yourself as an individual behind a brand? Excellent question. When I talk about draft, I use the word we, and that's partly because I have an assistant, but it's also partly because it's a corporation. So it's not necessarily a sole proprietorship, but it's also talking about we gives the impression that it's a more unified front, even when it's literally just me at a keyboard snuggling my dog. So I would recommend say that, talk about your business name and not necessarily yourself. And then you can talk about you're the president behind that business because it promotes your authority a little bit more. It's like resume padding. Everybody does it and you should do it too. I don't see any real reason, but why not? I hope that answers that. It's a hard turn of speech to shift to when you're writing. I still mess it up, but I would strongly recommend actually doing that. General question: when you prepare a project details page, how much detail should we get into? Do you look at writing detailed paragraphs, keeping in mind SEO keywords, or keep it simple to understand? Writing is hard and should be clear and easy to read. So if you're doing a bunch of weird flowery prose, you need to be writing more clearly and go back and edit it and make it more understandable. My personal belief, and you are welcome to push back on this, dear audience, is that good SEO sort of takes care of itself when you have trustworthy content and clear writing. And you promote your authority on, say, Q&A sessions like this one, or going to conferences, or guesting on blogs, or going on Rob's podcast last week. Those are all aspects, and they're all going to be linking back to your website and promoting your authority from that standpoint. Backlinks help SEO. We all know that. And you get more of them if you write really bomb case studies. So, I recommended value-based design that you write 1,000 words for every picture. Because people go feral when they look at pictures and they look at the picture and think, oh, I want that. But they don't really want that. They want an outcome for their business. And it's wildly unsexy to talk about outcomes for your business, but it's essential. It's essential for controlling the conversation and promoting your ideas and your thinking. So that is my recommendation. I write giant bricks of text and do not care about SEO at all. And it has helped my business. And I think I don't know, you have to have faith about it. It's scary to do that and not keyword stuff your pages or resort to weird gray hat tactics, but Google will catch up to you on those quick hit things. Like it's not a winning game. So, should I go one more on here, or do you have anything else, Rob?
Sure. You can pick another one off there.
Okay. This is interesting. It's a long question. I design and redesign Kickstarter pages. So I was the 19th project ever on Kickstarter. I wrote a book called Cadence and Slang, and it's sold 3,700 copies in the past 10 years. It's basically an evergreen primer on UX principles. I just threw it in the chat. So I know a lot about Kickstarter. I know I'm making an impact, having raised $2.2 million this year with a 100K campaign average and seeing ad conversion rates increase every time I do a redesign. But due to the limitations of the Kickstarter platform, I can't actually verify the improvements that I've made or link them back to the design with an A/B test. I run into the correlation is not causation issue, even though I can point to a graph where there's a clear spike in pledges or ad conversion rates after I updated the design. How do I get around this? Is it okay to just say, after we did the design, the conversion rate jumped by 8.2%, even though that may be implying something that I don't know for sure? This is a phenomenal question. You may be overthinking it. If you can point to that graph and there are no other real variables, like a major influencer didn't post about it or there wasn't a huge press push or something like that, yes, you can absolutely point to the graph and say that a conversion rate increased by 8.2%. This is something that I recommend in the measurement part of my book. If you are launching a redesign and you don't have the ability or resources or traffic to A/B test it, throw an annotation in Google Analytics and measure the before and after when you get enough traffic to actually do it. And by the way, congratulations, because those numbers are amazing, and you should be super proud of the work that you do. That's wonderful. But I think, point to the graph. If there are blind spots or things that could confound the data in that graph, you need to be honest and forthcoming with that information. But beyond that, you've done the work and you've proven your worth. So I think that's it. Thank you guys so much for all of it. This was lovely.
This was awesome. And Nick and I have been doing these for a couple of years now. So if we didn't get to your question right now, maybe Nick will be back sometime and we can get to it then.
If you didn't get to your question, you still have questions for me, email office@draft.nu and that will go to me. And I will be able to answer it offline anytime. And I might be back at some point. But awesome. The book is Value-Based Design.
There's a link to it too in this chat if anybody, the last link I posted. And so now I got to go open up my inbox, and I'm sure there's going to be angry people that didn't get to make it to the call.
Oh, well, that's the way. All right.
All right. Thanks everybody.
So much for listening. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm going to end the call here, and I think that's going to
kick everybody off.
So just wanted to give a heads up.
Yep.
Thank you to everybody.
Thank you.